Hello. We are going to walk through how to statistically analyze single subject data. Um, so normally you don't statistically analyze single subject data, but there are some scenarios where you would want to do this if you were tracking over time. And you wanted to see, hey, have we really made a difference over the last 10 weeks? It's really good to do before you have your own like professional evaluation so that you can show clients actually have improved. Saying that clients are doing better is not the same as being able to show spreadsheets of, look, I can statistically show that they're actually doing better. It also can be helpful when you are preparing for termination and you've got a apprehensive client and you're trying to help them see how well they're doing. It's also really good when clients are working through something and having a hard time to show them how much progress is being made. It helps foster some hope. So it's not something that you do all of the time, but it is something that you should know how to do. This file is available for you. So the spreadsheet that you're going to watch me fill out is already available. I'm going to walk you through how to use it. It's super simple. I've already put all of the equations in here. And then I'm going to show you how to interpret the results. Okay. So you can download this file and then use it for future anytime you want to statistically analyze a client's data. Now, this is for single subjects only. It's not for groups. So it's just comparing one person over time. But you could do it for several people in a group if you wanted to. All right, so the first thing that I want you to notice over here are that you have colored areas on the graph, on the spreadsheet, and then you have the graph in the middle. Right now it's not populated because I've intentionally deleted the values. You need two sets of data. The first is the baseline, all right? So baseline scores, and in general, you usually want 10 baseline scores. Now, most of the time we wouldn't wait 10 weeks before we start an intervention. So if you're thinking that you're going to start an intervention, say at week 4 or 5, at your 4th or 5th meeting, then you would want to collect data at least twice a week. So you could use a scale that you have them complete once when they're with you and then once midweek. You could even have them complete it, several times a week. So let's say you meet somebody and you're like, okay, we're definitely going to start an intervention in 3 weeks. Then you could go, okay, I want you to fill this out, today. I want you to fill it out on these other 2 days this week. We're going to fill it out when we meet again next week. And then these other 2 days, I want you to fill it out and then, bring that information back in. And you input the data scores here. So let's say, for example, we're tracking depression for a client. And we're looking at a scale that has a range of values of 0 to 50. All right. And let's say I'm just going to make up some scores in the beginning. Let's say that client is teetering somewhere around here. You would put in the first 10 baseline scores. Okay. Okay. And then your intervention, when it starts, you will then have 10 measures post start of intervention. So in theory, 10 weeks of an intervention, you should be able to accommodate. But if for some reason, say it's an intervention that's only 6 weeks long, then you would measure the client at least twice a week to get those scores. Like you might give them the first week off and then measure twice a week. Just figure out how are you going to get those 10 measures because you need at least 10. It is possible to extend this if you wanted to. And if you need help doing that, I can help you do that. But let's say post-intervention, we start to see some changes. Okay, so we've input the baseline scores and we've input the intervention scores. Once the intervention has started, those depression scores, right? You do not need to change any of these numbers under the difference for the score D or the absolute value difference for the score D. See how those automatically populated. You don't need to do anything with any of these other numbers. What you do need to do, though, is you need to move the lines on this graph. So the green dotted line needs to be placed at the numerical value of this number in this box. That's why I color-coded the boxes the way that they are. So the green line needs to move to about 38.7. So you just click on that line. We are going to 35, probably about here. That's where that should be. And then these burnt orange-ish colors, rust colors, lines, they need to be placed at the numerical value for this number and one for this number. So we'll move the top line to 45.5 about. I'm just going to put it about right there. And the other one needs to be placed at just under 32, so 31.9. Should be about right there. Okay, so now that we have moved the lines on our graph, how you interpret this is any time that a data point on these lines is above or below these rust-colored lines, it is a statistically significant difference from the normal trend of their baseline variation. Because in reality, in baseline, if you take enough measures, you're going to see clients' data move, okay? It'll go up, it'll go down, and that's why we need 10 data points, because if we'd only taken a few weeks, it would have looked like, if you look right here, they were doing significantly better by week 5. So why do the intervention, right? No, we want to do this so that we can figure out what is the natural variation of their range. Now, if the data points fall below the bottom rust-colored line, once you've adjusted it, it means that their scores have reduced in a statistically significant fashion, okay, or magnitude. If these data points are above the rust-colored line, then it means that their score increased to a statistically significant magnitude. Okay, it is beyond chance. It is beyond their normal variation that could occur. Okay, why do you want to know both values? Because you might be trying to improve something like self-esteem. Okay, you might also want to know if an intervention is making the client's symptoms significantly worse. If, for example, you are working with a client with PTSD and you are using a trauma-focused intervention that has an element of exposure, like EMDR, cognitive behavioral therapy, cognitive processing therapy, trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, even, oh gosh, I can't remember the name of it. DBT, dialectical behavior therapy. There are at prolonged exposure. All of those interventions have a degree of exposure to them, which means they have the potential to make symptoms worse before they get better. The underlying theory is that through the exposure, they become desensitized, yada, yada, yada. Some of the interventions have stepped approaches, and that means that they're building up coping skills in advance, but there's always still the risk that a client would get worse before they get better. Most of them, we understand that, right? But here's the thing. When do we give up on it getting worse and decide we need to backtrack and we need to stop what we're doing, regroup, build up some distress tolerance through coping skills, and then apply the intervention again or shift interventions, right? Well, one, that's your clinical decision. But two, if you're not statistically checking it when you're really worried about a client, you could just keep saying, well, things are going to get worse before they get better. They're going to get worse. If you're not actually measuring over time to look at these scores and then potentially checking this, you absolutely could cause attrition where the client just drops out and they won't just leave you. Oftentimes they don't want to go back to therapy at all. You increase the risk of harm to the client. It increases potential suicidality, right? Self-harm behaviors, things like that. And can cause other health complications because the reality is that heightened stress reactions are really bad for the brain. They literally disintegrate neurons and neural pathways, largely indiscriminately, which can further reduce a person's ability to regulate emotions, to regulate behavior, those kinds of things, right? So this is a really good way. One, you don't do it every single day, but it is a way for you to evaluate at-risk clients. If you're worried about the reaction that a client is going to have to an intervention, it's also a really good way to track a couple clients before you get evaluated to show that there is evidence that you're being effective. It's a good way to be able to go, hey, look, we've been working really hard and I know you're still struggling with some symptoms, but look at how much progress you've made on really working through the issues that have been causing your depression. We can see a significant change right here, right? Anyway, so this is how you statistically analyze single subject data. And it essentially establishes a statistical pattern, a mean and a lower and upper confidence level of a range of scores of how they normally have variation in their data. And then it uses that as a demarcation for any values that fall outside of that normal range once an intervention has started. Okay? And remember, any data points that fall outside of these rust-colored lines, once you've moved them to the correct values, represents a statistically significant change, meaning it's not chance, it's not a fluke. There really is a change outside of what their normal range would be. Okay, and hopefully it's in a positive way. All right, if you have any questions, you know where to find me. Otherwise, this file is available for you in this module, and I encourage you to download it and use it. Okay, thanks for watching.